Dr. Tabitha Labar recording the story given to us during the psychiatric evaluation of David Shore. May 15th, 2013. The patient was admitted for treatment of what appeared to be an attempt to amputate his own legs. It is worth noting that Shore himself is a psychologist, but appears to be currently in poor mental health. There was a moment of static on the tape and the woman's voice continued. "Tell it to me from the beginning, Dr. Shore." "You know that feeling you get when you feel as though you're being watched?" "Of course you do, we've all felt it." "We feel it more as children, and of course when we're already frightened of something." "It makes sense to me now. It's so simple. It's leftover survival instinct." "That, Dr. Labar, is the beginning. See, about a week ago I came across a website for short horror stories, and it inspired me to do a case study on myself regarding the effects of fear. Fear is a fascinating thing, isn't it? I read several stories until I came across one that really gave me the creeps, and the study began. I documented the basic things, the loud noises that my cat was making, pushed an immediate adrenaline response, even though I knew where the sound was coming from. A hyper-awareness of my surroundings was persistent as expected. I couldn't help but scan the dark hallway outside my bedroom repeatedly, and the tapping in the vents in the ceiling seemed louder than they had ever been, and much more obtrusive. These are all expected results of fear and nothing particularly interesting. However, as I was winding down, I saw in the dim light cast against the stairwell, visible from my desk, a shadow pass from somewhere, apparently out of sight, presumably blocked by the wall ahead of me. As my cat Gur was in my lap, this was obviously a manifestation of my frightened mind, as nothing could have been there to produce the fleeting shade. I jotted down that it was interesting that my mind, winding down from fear, appeared to be trying to keep me in that hyper-aware and agitated state by creating apparitions. And then it got stranger. I had noticed Gur's ears perk up suddenly when I'd seen the shadow, but I hadn't thought anything of it. A moment later, Gur sat up abruptly, obviously alarmed. Gur then looked directly at where the shadow had been, and then into my eyes, and then to that spot on the stairwell again, and then to my eyes again, over and over about a dozen times, very quickly. As concern mounted and I was about to get up to investigate, as he had never acted in this manner, he jumped down and ran to the very spot in the hall, where the apparition making the shadow would have had to been standing. He then ran into the laundry room, his safe place in the house, where he remained for about an hour until I went to bed. It was bizarre, but perhaps Gur just acted oddly because he sensed my fear. I decided to sleep on it. Anyway, that was my last personal entry as a psychologist. It's funny, isn't it? How something so simple can become so terrible. The night after, when I got home, Gur was still acting strangely. I decided to keep an eye on him, and again I sat down to read some creepy stories. As I was reading, I heard a strange noise coming from the hall. It was the pad of heavy feet on carpet and growling. At first I assumed it to be my frightened mind twisting noise Gur might have made. But when I turned and I saw that he was safely asleep on my bed, I carefully reached to my bedstand, wherein I had a hunting knife for security, and I brought it up with me to investigate the hallway. Atop the stand was a picture of me and my good friend Jen, goofily waving at the camera. Looking at that made me feel a little bit better, and I was off into the hallway with my knife. The blasted light switch was on the opposite side of the hall, of course, so I let my eyes focus a moment. Just as my vision was adjusting, I saw a shadow bolt down the stairs. Air caught in my throat and I lunged forward to the light switch, but whatever it was had gone. The following day went by fairly normally. Someone had placed a picture of a wolf where my face should have been on the placards indicating where each doctor was located, and there was trouble finding the old picture file again, so I had my photo taken and I was settled. It was odd, but that was all that was unusual that day. Actually, I had gotten the pretty girl at the coffee counter's number that day, and I was walking on air by the time I had headed home. I had completely forgotten about the incident of the night before. That is until I opened my front door. Nothing was out of place per se, but something was off about it. It smelled strange in there. The air was oddly warm and sticky. I had a strange feeling that the house was breathing, and the deep nagging feeling that something was watching me. It was as though the whole place was plotting against me. I kicked on the AC unit, put it out of my mind, and I went about my business. I decided to avoid the horror stories that night. I instead opted for some late-night television from the comfort of my bed. This time Gur wasn't in my room, but when the footfalls and heavy breathing came from down the hall, I knew full well that it wasn't my cat. I listened carefully and it happened again, louder, heavy footfalls and angry growling. I crept away from my bed and into the dark hallway, again with the knife. That damn light switch. And as I made my way towards it, I heard the growl again, lower, more powerful. It shook me to my core and I ran to the light switch and I flipped it on. Gur was staring at me from the floor, but I saw nothing else. I peered into the laundry room. Nothing, but then the growl again, right behind me. I spun to face it. It was Gur, staring up at me menacingly. This tiny tabby cat was baring his teeth and snarling like a beast, like a wolf, I remember thinking. My timid cat had never done such a thing. I tried to pick him up and he viciously dug his teeth into my hand. I screamed and I swung my arm. I had to pry his jaw open with my other hand and I locked him in the laundry room. I needed stitches. When I arrived home from the doctor and as I was getting ready for bed, I heard my cat, my dear Cabby. He was screaming and yowling and snarling and roaring, a combination of cat sounds and something much more sinister. I got up to silence him. I didn't know how I would, but I had to try something. Maybe I would just feed him a Vicodin. As soon as I stood, the noise stopped. I shook my head in irritation and my eyes fell on the photo of Jen and I. Only I had disappeared from the photo, and in my stead was a vicious-looking wolf, and Jen standing next to it, still smiling and waving at the camera. I have never felt such a chill as I did when I saw that photograph. It's hard for me to believe that I slept at all that night, because after I had ripped up the picture, I went to bed shaking badly. When I awoke, I couldn't believe my eyes. My darling Tabby was torn apart at the foot of my bed, and his blood was unceremoniously spattered against the wall and television across from me. Shaking, I got a trash bag and I scooped his remains into it. I called in sick that day to clean my room, bury my cat, and install new locks and cameras. I didn't know what else to do. With Gur gone, I made sure that the house was secure. I closed and I locked my bedroom door, and I made sure that the cameras were recording. One in my room, one in the living room facing the front door and stairs leading to my room, and one outside of the door. I couldn't imagine that what I might see would explain Gur's behavior, but perhaps he was acting out towards an unseen intruder. He certainly didn't tear himself apart. That night I slept restlessly, and I awoke at around 2 in the morning to a thud coming from downstairs. I quickly and silently moved to my laptop and I connected to the downstairs camera. At first I saw nothing. I peered closely, and with some concentration and patience, I realized something was lurking in the shadows near my kitchen. I zoomed in on it, but could only make out small movements of some dog-sized animal. I must have peered at it for 10 minutes, and it barely moved in that time. Finally, it started to make it towards my stairs. I watched it stalk towards my steps, and I reached for my nightstand, towards my knife. I realized that I would have to take my eyes off the screen to get the knife, so I resolved to wait until it had started up the stairs out of sight of the camera. It stopped on the first step, in the light of the street lamp coming into the window. I realized then it was a wolf. With a shock, it was identical to the one that had appeared in my bedside photograph. As I watched, it turned and stared directly into the camera. Just when I thought that my nerves could take no more, the wolf smiled. The goddamn wolf smiled. It was the most disturbing thing that I'd ever seen up until that point. This grinning beast and glistening teeth on display just for me, and I ran to my bedstand for my knife. Gur was sitting on the nightstand. In shock, I paused and he leaped and clamped his jaws around my hand, right into the stitches from his first bite. I forced him off and I pinned him down. He weighed no more than 12 pounds, but his thrashing still nearly managed to knock him away from me. I threw him in the closet, and as I did, a loud bang came from just outside of my room. I grabbed the knife, peered at the monitor. The wolf was gone. I stood against my door and I listened to breathing. Blood poured from my hand. I had to get to the aid kit in the bathroom. Hell, I just wanted to get out of that house. But the breathing from the door, the growling, was it coming from behind the door? Jesus, it sounded like the door itself was breathing. It swayed against the lock, gently tapping in the doorframe. And all the while, I could hear that wolf pacing the hall. But the door wasn't moving with the wolf. It took me another moment of staring at the door to realize it was breathing. The door was swelling and contracting. I shoved my knife through the center of it, and blood spurted out against me. I had had enough. I grabbed my laptop with all the camera feeds and recordings on there, and with my knife in my pocket in my pajamas, I leapt from the window, and down the kitchen awning, and I landed hard on the side of the house. A great howl rang out from my bedroom, and I looked back as I ran from my car, and I saw Gur peering out of the window after me. He didn't have the eyes of my cat anymore. He had wolf's eyes. I drove. Jesus, I don't even know how far I drove. I know now and suspected then that whatever is in my house, it couldn't or wouldn't follow me out. I don't know if there's a demon in my house, some entity that just wants to torment me. I don't have an answer for whether my cat is alive or what it has become. I just know that the worst mistake of my life was stopping in front of the Starbucks that morning, turning on my laptop and looking at the camera feeds. The first thing I saw was my Facebook account. It had been left open. There were maybe a dozen messages asking me why the hell I had photoshopped a wolf in my place and all the pictures I was in. Several people had asked me how the hell I had altered pictures of myself that were on their accounts. I trembled at the idea, but I pushed it to the back of my mind and I turned on the feeds. There was the wolf staring me down from the hall, through the bedroom camera. It just stared and smiled. I backed up the video. Jesus, I wish I could just go back and stop myself. I backed up the video and watched in reverse as I stabbed the door, stood by it and was attacked by Gur, who according to the video had been there since I was asleep. Gur was just watching me all night. And when I got to about 11 p.m., right about the time I had gone to bed, the video skipped and what I saw was not me getting into bed in reverse. And the walls appeared to come alive. Formless entities came out of them with knives and began cutting at my legs. To my horror and agony as the video played, my legs were being slashed and cut right before my very eyes, right underneath my laptop. I closed the damn machine and it stopped. It had found me through the cameras, that was my last thought, before I had passed out and I woke up here. You see, they like to watch when people are afraid. They're fascinated by fear. There's no other rhyme or reason for this. We unlucky souls who pique their curiosity. We're like rats in a horrible maze. The feeling you're getting right now, the feeling that you're being watched. Of course you are, because they're watching me. They're waiting. I only hope for your sake that they find you less amusing. The bar shivered. There was a moment of static on the tape and it ended. And Dr. Labar sighed and stood up, stirring her now cold coffee thoughtfully. What had happened to Shore? They had been colleagues. He was smart, well-adjusted, and now obviously completely insane. The hunting knife was covered in his own blood, and it matched the wounds in his legs. They may have to be amputated, and he was in ICU now. She peered carefully at the laptop that had been brought in with him, opened it and saw that the recording of the video was paused and him sleeping peacefully. She shrugged. What did she expect to see? A possessed cat? A wolf entity in walls with knives? No. She expected to see nothing at all. She pressed play on it first. The video was still. The cat on the bedstand did have an odd look as if it stared at its owner. Maybe Gur knew that Shore was crazy. But soon, however, the walls did appear to come alive. Long, slender arms reached out and grabbed the doctor from his bed and began ripping and tearing the very meat from his bones. They used scalpels and medical drills, and the bar, completely convinced it was some sort of elaborate video prank, watched in horror as pieces of a wolf were stitched and forced into his body. He writhed in pain, helpless until he was a wolf, lying on a bed soaked in his own blood. And the cat hadn't moved at all. Labar shut the laptop, disgusted. As she had left her office, a black and gray tabby cat ran by her feet. And very suddenly, she felt as though something was watching her. And from the ICU, she clearly made out the sound of growling.